Well, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Certified. I forgot what podcast talking about movie or release with 10 or fewer reviews on Rotten Tomatoes.
What the fuck?
I wanted, it's old hat, it's rote at this point, so I wanted to speed through it as quickly as possible.
But what if someone's listening to us for the first time?
Oh, if somebody's listening to us for the first time, then I've got great news for them. You have stumbled across the internet's horror podcast that talks about horror films with 10 or fewer reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. Every other week, usually, typically, that's the cadence we try and adhere to. Sometimes every other week, we'll do an episode that is just myself and my co-founder, colleague, and friend, Matt Donato, where we talk about a new release. We call them our Uncertified episodes, and that, my new friend, is what you are listening to right now. You're listening to a 30-minute Uncertified episode, not a 1-hour certified episode, and we're going to talk about Evil Dead Burn. How is that? Do you think our new listener will stick around, Matthew?
I think that is better. And if you would like to get an example, new listener, of one of our guest episodes of how we usually do the podcast, you can go listen to our last episode with filmmaker Mike Mendez of big ass spider fame, Satanic Hispanics. And he brought us a movie with 10 or less critic reviews on Rotten Tomatoes that he loves called Reflections of Evil that I enjoyed and Monagle fucking hated.
I feel some ways about it. It's all in the episode. It's all on tape. You can go listen to that. Which is always, I think it's great when we have a guest episode. We've got more of them lined up. We're recording more of them. We're gonna go back to the one and one cadence. I think everybody likes that the most. But gosh, I hope our guests bring us stuff that I can vibe with a little bit more than Reflections of Evil, because that was a lot. There is brilliance to it, there is madness to it, and there's just a little bit of the Emperor's New Clothes to it too, where you're like, this guy might be naked. He just might not be wearing anything at all. Anyways, we don't need to relitigate that film. We are here to talk to you this week about the highly anticipated Evil Dead Burn. If you have not caught it in movie theaters yet, let me give you a quick plot synopsis. After the sudden death of her husband, Will Price, the newly widowed Alice joins her in-laws for a memorial at their family estate. But as the evening unfolds, the Prices learn that the tragedy was far less accidental than they thought. There are undead forces who have the Price family set square in their sights. And if Alice and her estranged in-laws cannot find a way to ward off the evil dead, they may just find themselves, and say it with me, dead by dawn. Matt Donato, you saw this before me. You saw this well before me, I believe. What was your immediate reaction to Evil Dead Burn?
My immediate reaction was, it's my least favorite Evil Dead movie, but there's no such thing as a bad Evil Dead movie. In a lot of ways, it gave me exactly what I wanted, and it's a brilliant kind of way to take the canon of Evil Dead and, the dagger, the Necronomicon, everything that exists in the lore. This is I think, an interesting continuation that plays with themes that are so brilliant in the idea of deadite canon, of basically having to, whether it's family, whether it's friends, having to see people you love just turn into these monsters, but to also use the dynamic of a not so cordial family reunion to do so. I think there's a lot of good in the approach. I think there's a lot of good in so much of it. I get lost because I'm going to try to say this as succinctly as possible, because this could be a whole other conversation, because I think a lot of people have gotten off base of what the Evil Dead franchise is, which is to say, one of the first things I said after leaving Evil Dead is, holy shit, that is such a mean Evil Dead movie. Now, I want to say out loud, Evil Dead is a mean franchise. I do not mean that this is a mean movie and none of the others are. I will say this, I keep saying it, this is a franchise that started with tree rape. We know this is a mean franchise. But where I was coming from is the sense of, my favorite Evil Dead movie is the remake, which is sacrilegious, and then not far behind, Evil Dead 2. Because as much as I love the spooky scary, as much as I love what Fede Alvarez did with the remake, I will always be drawn to the Ash Williams and Bruce Campbell of the Evil Dead, because that personality, that slapstick, that physical comedy, what Raimi does with the Three Stooges-ness of it all, like, that is my flavor of horror.
Yes.
And all I mean by saying that, holy shit, Evil Dead Burn is maybe a little too mean, is more that it doesn't balance what's going on, because plenty of people say Evil Dead Burn has comedy in it, and I am not saying you are wrong, because comedy is very personal to all of us, and that is something I'm sure we'll discuss. I did not
Mhm.
laugh once during this movie.
I laughed a
I
couple of times.
so
I'll put that out there right now.
so
I laughed a
exactly.
handful of times.
And that I Perry and I fought over this too, and it's again, it's not a fight, but I just felt so burdened by the overall evil of it all and how far Sebastian pushes into it, that it overshadowed those moments of comedy, and I never felt a certain type of balance that I am used to. So again, I don't need my Evil Dead to be a horror comedy, but I did feel like this was kind of one flavor of an Evil Dead movie, and I wanted it to be a little better combined, if that makes sense.
It does, but I should also point out that your rankings has 2013's Evil Dead at the very top,
Yeah,
which is
true.
I recall. It's been a few years since I watched it. I don't recall that to be a particularly funny movie. I think it is much closer on the spectrum to Evil Dead Burn than it is to Evil Dead 2.
100%. And I even point out in my review, like if you want to compare Burn to anything, it is 2013. That was the horror first. That was the beat you over the head, use only practical effects, be as gross as possible. Like, I do agree that is, and I'm contradicting myself by saying like my favorite is
It's
maybe
okay.
not the most funny, but on a rewatch, there's stuff I still laugh at though. There is
Mm,
so much of Jane Levy playing her deadite form that does have that kind of comedy I'm looking for. Lou Taylor Pucci I found very funny to be the idiot of the group in certain ways, and his reactions. So I think that while Fede Alvarez did take the straightforward horror approach, I did still find the balance there. It
okay.
wasn't again, it wasn't a Bruce Campbell, it wasn't an Ash Williams, it wasn't that kind of let me own an entire scene of where I fight my hand in a kitchen and just make it one of the best scenes of cinema.
Right.
But I think Fede Alvarez understood a little more. And if I'm being honest, Lee Cronin understood it better too. I mean, Lee Cronin did a great job with Rise. I think that's of those post Campbellian movies. I think I'll give Lee Cronin credit and say Rise is a great balance of both of that.
Yeah. It's I couldn't disagree with you more, Matthew, but only in the sense that I am kind of going through a little bit of a reevaluation of my own relationship with the Evil Dead franchise after this film. I watched this and then I rewatched Rise, and I liked Rise a little bit less than I did when I saw it the first time at South by a few years ago. And I kind of loved Evil Dead Burn. And I've been trying to figure out why, because I am notoriously someone who does not go for mean movies. And my friend Noel has a way of putting it, which I think is a good way of saying it. He says that the Evil Dead Burn is mean, but it's not cruel, which I think is a very good description of kind of like the balancing act. It's mean, but it's not cruel. And if you know, you know. You've seen movies that are cruel, you know what those are. I like this movie. I think this movie is funny. And I had it because I went on my friends at Cult Pop. They had me on their podcast this week. I had to do my own rankings of the Evil Dead movies. I put this second behind only Evil Dead 2. So my rankings were Evil Dead 2, Evil Dead Burn, and then the original Evil Dead, and then it kind of cascades down from there. And I don't know. Like I've been thinking a little bit about. It also inspired me. I definitely need to go rewatch 2013 again to see how I feel about that movie. But I think that there is something to be said for the humor in these movies, not necessarily coming from the characters, but from the filmmakers themselves. And by that, I mean, there is an exuberance that is present in all of these of directors saying, effectively being like, holy shit, I can't believe I'm getting away with this. And you feel that wildly in the Sam Raimi movies. The original trilogy is 1,000,000% a filmmaker who's like, I can't believe somebody is fucking footing the bill for this. Every scene on the screen just bleeds that. Again, I don't remember the 2013 movie that well, but that's also present in Rise. I think like Lee Cronin has a lot of stuff in that movie, which fell a little bit in my estimation. We don't need to get into that, but I think there are a lot of bits that happen in that movie where you're like, it is a filmmaker who is saying, "Holy shit, I can't believe I'm getting away with this." And this film, Evil Dead Burn, maybe that hit that note for me the hardest with some of the stuff that they committed to screen, where I was like, oh my God, I can't believe a studio signed off on this. Some of the stuff that happens in this movie is so ridiculous, so over the top, so breathtakingly kinetic and bombastic in terms of what kind of stunts and effects they're able to do on screen. And they're really gory and they're very, very mean, not cruel, but mean. I find myself responding to the energy of the directors and what they're able to get away with on screen in a way that I wasn't expecting, because I went into this thinking I was not going to like it, because every single person sold this as new French extremity. And it was actually the first moment that I was like, maybe there's a chance, is when I saw Phil Fangoria, who was saying that the movie is actually funnier than people are giving it credit for. So that was my one like breath of fresh air in all of the pre-wave hype, because everybody else was basically like, "Oh, it's high tension, but with deadites," and I was like, "My God, that does not sound like for me at all." And yet I ended up kind of loving it.
I mean, I do see this as the new French extremity of the Evil Dead universe. I think there is so much put into the deaths in this movie and the design of deadites that are constantly ablaze. That is so very rad and so very cool. The pain meter of this movie is up there with the rest of them. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's any one Evil Dead movie that's lacking in that, but to say, Evil Dead Burn rose to the challenge of being that, and I think that is what Sebastian was gonna always gonna bring. If you've seen Infected, I mean, or sorry, Infected,
Infested.
Infested,
Yeah.
Infested, or Vermin, if you saw it overseas. But that Spider movie, what you called Rack the Block, which is exactly what it is. It's pure energy. It's pure adrenaline. It is mean, but it is also like mean with a point and a great little creature feature. And I was like, okay, like this makes sense as an Evil Dead director. I see exactly why you're being pulled in. Where I think I don't meet your, I guess, like comparisons and stuff 100% is I feel like this is a cruel movie, and I don't feel like it gets away with it as much as other Evil Dead movies, because it feels to me like we are starting at the end of an act one. And I don't necessarily need a ton of exposition. I don't need a ton of background. But this was one of the only times in the Evil Dead universe where I sat there not really feeling like these characters were anything more than deadite fodder. And I
Mm.
know that that's just what an Evil Dead movie is at the end of the day. Like, characters are just deadite fodder, but I didn't get the oomph of certain moments that I really wanted to. And I think there are just certain elements of who turns and when that happens so quickly that I'm like, I never got a sense of like, I know they're all dealing with their demons, and there is something evil in this family because of where we start. I mean, Will, as you mentioned, like it is Will's funeral that brings everyone together, and Will is an abuser, and Will is, sorry, a closet abuser. So his family loves him and thinks he's this perfect child. But Alice, Souheila Yacoub's character, who becomes like the final girl of the movie, like we find out through her flashbacks how much that he was abusing her behind closed doors, and that is such right material for the Evil Dead. It's so smart. It is this idea of, I mean, when everyone's alive, it's this idea of like, how do you confront someone and just like tell them the person that they love is this monster behind closed doors, but also like what comes out of that, the evil that preys on it. So much good stuff there. And yet, every time someone turned, I was kind of just like, okay, I don't understand like certain decisions. Understand is not the right word. I understood everything that was going on here, but
Right.
like I
Right.
didn't feel certain decisions. And I think Joseph is my example of when he is in the car and driving with his partner, and Papa is unwell and Papa's done some shit. He ain't doing good. And there is this, you know, gut wrenching moment where Joseph has a choice to try to save his partner or let his father murder her, and he just runs like a coward. And I get the trickle of information of that makes sense, but I didn't feel like that was totally earned. I
Mm.
didn't feel like the dog death was totally earned. And I am not someone who is like, don't kill the dog. If the dog makes sense, it makes sense. And listen, we get a dogite out of it, so that is dope. But
That was pretty good.
there were so many mean things in this movie that I didn't feel were as earned as I did in other Evil Dead movies. So again, that's where I struggled with it, and it being more than just like a practical effects showcase, except for the Terminator ass ending.
Yeah, there were. So I have told people that I think that this is the first Evil Dead movie where the characters deserve it to varying degrees. But I guess we'll get into spoiler territory here because if we talk a little bit about the family, you're gonna learn some things about their origins and what they are. The movie makes it pretty clear pretty early that William, her former husband, her late husband, still whatever, it doesn't matter. The person that she married that gets killed and may or may not come back is an abuser. And as the film unfolds, it also becomes pretty obvious that everybody in the family knew to varying degrees and kind of let it slide. Did not step up for Alice, did not intervene on Alice's behalf, that they chose their family over this person who was in need of help. That is the real victim there. That hits everybody a little bit differently. I think that if you needed to rank people on the spectrum, like Lucienne Buchanan, the character of Thea, is still culpable a little bit, but less so, and gets sort of the worst hand dealt by the movie. The parents, I think, are obviously a little bit more culpable there. But there is as I was walking out of the film, I was talking to my friend, and one of the things that he said is he was like, "Oh, I didn't love the scene where Susan embraces her husband in the window, who is a deadite at that point, and like embraces him as the deadite. That there was no duplicity there because of the history of Evil Dead is like them presenting as a normal version of themselves and then turning. But I think that scene is kind of key to understanding the movie, which is that the character Susan Price sees the monster and says, "Well, this is still family, so I still choose you." She chooses consciously, actively the Deadite because family matters more than anything else. And I think that is kind of the linchpin statement of the rest of the movie, which is why that scene plays so well. Is these are people that choose themselves above anybody else to the exclusion and to the physical pain of Alice. And so that notion that they're the worst family that I've seen in a horror movie in a minute. And I do think that the movie, in a bunch of different small ways, sort of sets up the fact that like it's hard to say that having your soul swallowed and becoming a deadite for all eternity, that you deserve it. They are not teenagers in a cabin in the woods. They are not the Evil Dead Rise family, which definitely doesn't deserve it. Like they are people who bring about their own destruction and who does kind of like let the evil in. So I think the movie doesn't. I think that the movie, at least for me, and it'll be kind of like a little bit of a personal opinion there for a lot of folks who watch it. I do think that the violence is met by the stakes a little bit when it comes to what the families have done to Alice and what that means for like the end game of the movie.
Yeah, and I actually really like the window scene you're talking about where Papa Deadite, whatever we want to, fantastically comes to the window. It is just he has his romantic moment, and I think to your point, it does display so in your face that this mother, this wife, is choosing to become a deadite. It's not even like choosing
Yeah,
the abuse. It's not even choosing to be complicit and all that stuff. Literally is choosing to be a deadite because, well, that's what family does, kind of shit. And
correct.
that stuff's great. I think there is so much working in those areas that is so good, but there is also other elements where I feel like Lucienne is playing the best deadite here. I mean, if we're going to talk about standout
Yes,
deadites,
yes.
just having so much fun with it, and the idea that like Lucienne turns in the car and is brutally murdered with a car headrest, which is such a inventive way to kill someone.
That's got to be on your list at the end of the year, right? The Fango
But did it
list.
kill her?
Fair enough.
I know, no, I know. Like
Fair enough.
I'll have to
But
do my
it'll be
boundaries.
in consideration. It's got to be in the mix.
No, 100%. But like when she walks back in and takes it out of her mouth and just starts playing with people. I mean, let's talk about Grandma Polly, like that right there when Lucienne's deadite takes the dentures out, and there is good stuff here. And again, like that's a humor moment. The
Yeah.
denture moment's a humor moment. I still didn't laugh. That's me, I guess. I don't know. But
Can I interrupt you really quick? Talking about Grandma Polly, the Maud Davy character, you did not laugh when she was like slowly pulled down the stairs by her like little portable chair thing after Alice
I
flipped the switch,
snickered.
where she just sort of dragged. All right, I'll take a snicker.
I
Continue,
snickered.
please.
I
Sorry, go
snickered.
ahead.
No, but when Lucienne leaves, I feel like there's a little air that goes out. I think
I
her
agree.
deadite performance is so good
I'll give that.
that the others just don't really stand up to it. And again, like that's not something I've really felt that much in an Evil Dead movie, because I go back to 2013 and like why I love it so much There is a wonderful scene where a few deadites are going at it at once, and you have, like, again, Poochie, the cast, like, they're all there, and they're all banging. Or you have Sutherland and the kiddos, like, in deadite form, all good stuff. I do think Byrne has its highlights in this form, and there is, although, a ceiling to them, and then when one is removed, like, earlier than others, that's a point that I did notice again, where a little air is let out of the movie. But again, I feel like I'm being negative here, and this is a movie I did like. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said before, like at the beginning of the podcast, I don't think there's an bad Evil Dead movie, but I am so over the moon about the kills in this movie,
Yes.
and the brutality and everything that's brought into it. But there's not much more else where, like, I'm not that stoked to see any of these deadites return, versus I'd always love to see Jane Levy come back. I know Jane Levy escaped the remake, and there would have to be something to turn her back into her deadite form, but, like, I would pay to see that in a heartbeat again, to see her do it again. Alyssa Sutherland, like, we can talk later, but, like, Alyssa Sutherland would be great to come back and do a collaboration of sorts, where
My
I
queen, Alyssa Sutherland.
but, like, I don't need that from any of these Byrne
Yeah.
deadites. I got my fill of them, and I'm kind of like, okay, we can. It's a nice kind of franchise builder, but it didn't have the staying power for me that the other ones do. Where, like, I would love to revisit most of the Evil Dead movies, kind of at any time, but Byrne to me is the it's kind of just like the rock in between. You just hop on and keep on hopping over the river, kind of stuff.
Sure. I did find one of the things that going back and rewatching Evil Dead Rise, part of the reason that I liked it less is because it really felt stuck between trying the new concepts of the trilogy, or the new concepts of the series, whatever they want to do with, like, the new Evil Dead stuff, charting its own course. But it kept having these throwbacks and connective tissue, not even in terms of, like, lore, but in terms of, like, story beats, stunts, dialogue, things like that, to the original trilogy. So there are a lot of moments in Evil Dead Rise where they do the, like, I'll swallow your soul thing, or they do, like, the record thing. And it's obvious that they're trying to, it's not a legacy quote at all. Like, it is its own thing, but it is indicative of a period where they were like, we have to reheat yesterday's dinner a little bit before we can add, like, new toppings and sides and stuff like that to create a new meal. One of the things I do like about Evil Dead Burn is that I think it is the first of these films that feels like it is saying, we're not super interested in whatever came before. Yes, there is a Book of the Dead. Yes, there is a knife. Those pieces are there. But in terms of how the film plays out, there aren't a ton of callbacks to the original trilogy, in the sense that, like, they're not recreating story beats or violence beats or things of that nature. I found it to be much different in a refreshing way from the original trilogy, in the sense that it kind of goes forward and says, this is what an Evil Dead movie looks like now, not what a new version of an Evil Dead movie looks like. And you can, yeah, you were giving me some I disagree with you faces, so I'll let you speak up to that. But that's in me. Evil Dead Rise still caught a little bit between the Raimis and the new stuff. Burn feels like it's a bit less tethered. Whether or not that we feel that way after the next couple of movies, whether or not it still maintains sort of its editorial independence, it does feel like it's the first of something new, rather than something that's breaking off from Evil Dead tradition.
Well, I mean, number one, I agree with you. I'm gonna say that Sébastien does his own thing with this, and
Yeah,
that's what I love. I mean, when I interviewed him, I said the first thing was like, "Hey, how awesome was it to have the freedom to be a filmmaker in this Evil Dead world, but bring yourself into it?" Because I was like, I can already tell you who you are as a filmmaker from Infested, and now
right,
I can doubly tell because of Evil Dead Burn, and you did the
right.
same thing, and that's a good thing. You have a great thing going in the horror genre. But I'm assuming you didn't see the two Bruce Campbell pictures then.
No, I wasn't paying that close attention to the stuff in there.
So that is
But those are Easter eggs. Those are not connective tissue.
so we don't know that
All right, fair.
because Perry did her detective work as always, and she saw the movie twice and doubled down and talked to Sebastian, and 100% confirmed. Yeah, that's Bruce Campbell. So now you're forced to think, was Bruce Campbell the grandfather? Was there a name change? Was there something of that nature? I
Whoa.
That's what I'm saying. So
No,
I
yeah,
actually
yeah, 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 yeah.
I actually agree with you on the I didn't need this to be connected to anything major in that way. I would have liked it just to live in its own world once again. I think the Evil Dead franchise has the greatest setup as a current horror franchise to continue moving forward. Because while there is rewriting to the rules, let's say, and while there is, let's take right off the bat, there are now multiple Necronomicons
Yeah.
because of Rise and because of what's been done. So that is a cool thing. And that means that any Evil Dead can happen anywhere in the world. What if there's more books? What if there's more this? You give the director and writer free reign moving forward to make their own spin on Evil Dead. I didn't need to see this become something like Texas Chainsaw or Halloween or something where it's like,
Right.
well, how do we get back to the core story? How do we get back to this? I didn't need it. I legitimately didn't. This has Saw written all over it, where just give me a rerun of what I love, but a director giving it their spin. And I think that's where Saw ultimately failed, because every director just tried to recreate James Wan, and we didn't really get anything different. With Evil Dead, we can get different takes on Deadites, different takes on this. And that was burned to me because the flame imagery and this idea that this movie is always a rage because that's what the Inferno visuals give you. So brilliant. Again, such a nice little touch on it. And I did just seeing these little of course there's going to be callbacks. Of course there's going to be things like that. But these were so overt in a way that it kind of lessens the impact once again of the movie, because I'm sitting there going like, wait, so like she's holding the picture, but in the time frame, but in this and in that. So yeah, that is that again. That's my take on thatness
Yeah.
of it.
I see that. And I think that's part of the, when you're starting out with like a series of films, how you feel about a movie and the direction it takes when it's released versus how you feel about it after they filled in some of those blanks can be very different. So right now, as of what is it, July 16th, 2026, as of this recording, Evil Dead Burn is not setting up anything overtly. There is subtext, maybe there's a playbook in the background. Maybe it will eventually. Maybe not Evil Dead Wretch or whatever it's called. I can never remember the name of it. Wrath, Evil Dead Wrath. Maybe that one ties back to this. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's the next movie if we have another one. Maybe
Well, I mean,
suddenly
it's a prequel. We know that
we know
Wrath is
that's a
going to be.
prequel, yeah.
It's a prequel in the 70s, so they're setting up.
Which
I
could be the
think they're going to
grandfather
set.
stuff. It could be the grandfather stuff as part of it, right? Like, but all of that is subtext. What we get in the movie right now is its own thing, and that will continue to be something that I appreciate until whatever point at which it's not. Until whatever point at which basically they're like, it was the plan all along to like do a retro sequel type thing. So I reserve the right to change my mind once they fill in the lines a little bit more, if they're going to fill in between the lines a little bit more. But for this film, for this standalone thing that it is right now, it was very nice to see them punt on a lot of the established lore and a lot of the established character beats. I mean, they say Dead by Dawn because every Evil Dead movie has to say Dead by Dawn eventually, but there really aren't that many. There aren't that many. There's not really a. Is there a chainsaw? There's not. There's a weed whacker. The weed whacker stuff. They honor the movies without trying to mimic them, and I think that is something that I appreciated. And I think that Sébastien does a much better version of that. I love Lee Cronin. I'm a Lee Cronin guy, but I do think he does a better job of that than Rise, which at times is more mimicry than homage or honoring. I think sometimes it's basically just like, here's a chainsaw, we're going to do a chainsaw thing because the other movies had a chainsaw too. Fine, but again, it is the connective tissue that holds that back a little bit.
And again, at the end of the day, man, some real fun kills. Although I have some questions about how Joseph was able to get off the dishwasher.
Yeah,
with all those blades right into his what looked like right around his spine, which would probably sever something and make it impossible to get up. But we put that outside of our head because this is an Evil Dead movie, and that scene again is great because
yes.
oh man, when she gets on top and you can feel it, like you get the tingles in your back because you know how bad that sucks, and that is the beauty of an Evil Dead movie. You are pushed beyond your limits, and I think Evil Dead Burn pushes limits in a way that few Evil Dead movies have. This is going right for it. This is going right for the kill. And while I did struggle with the overall tone, and like I wish I laughed more at Grandma Polly being a racist and all that stuff. Like there are elements of it that I wish I laughed at, but I think maybe like the French humor, like crossing over to America, kind of didn't work for me in a certain way, and I just kind of found it throwaway. So I wish it was a little more balanced, but the end of the day, I got my stabbies, I got my deadite goodness, I got everything I wanted. I got some really good reds, man. I got some really
Oh, you
great
got some really good reds.
shots drenched in red lighting filters. Again, the rage is always there. This is an angry movie, and it should be. So everything is there for me to have fun with this movie. I just can't put it towards the top of my ranking.
Yeah. Yeah, my friend JD refers to this franchise as pizza. There's no bad pizza. There's no bad Evil Dead movies. It's all good. I hate how much you are now like I am in the middle of a movie and they put on a red filter and my mind goes to Matt Donato every time. Like I think of you every single time a director does that. Can I 30 seconds or less? How do you feel about the post-credit stinger?
I am so conflicted, and this would take way
Yeah.
more time. So I will just do the 30-second version and say, what a cool little scene in a bubble, but it just makes my mind spin about where this is going to go from there, because this is not the first time a character has been brought back as a deadite. Cheryl was right there. And yet it brings me right back to my thought of we didn't have to. And
Yeah.
we're doing the thing where we're I don't want to say anything more because it
Yeah.
could work and it could be great. So I don't want out the gate to be like, why'd you do this? But it makes me nervous, and I hope they pull it off.
The maybe not so much movies, but the history of television is full of supporting characters or single episode characters that were so well received by both the audience and the writers' room that they found reasons for them to keep coming back, and then eventually they became a series regular. So my hope is that it's one of those types of situations where this character is so beloved on both sides of the screen that they were like, well, we got to find a reason to make more movies with this person. Um, I I love that character. I love that actor in that role. And we'll see. I think we'll see. They've earned the right to do what they want to do with that. That is our episode on Evil Dead Burn, a movie that we both really liked. You should read my review at certifiedforgotten.com. You should read Matt Donato's review. You wrote that for Daily Dead, correct? Dailydead.com. Yep.
Daily
Read
did.
both of those and then tell us who you like better, who's the better writer, because, we're competitive like that. Matt Donato, right now as we speak, we're both covering Fantasia a little bit. We're gonna have some Fantasia titles. You at Daily Dead, me at Certified Forgotten. But you're entering. I feel like I say this every month, but this is the truly the period where you're entering your busy season. So where do folks stay connected to you online to find your reviews of festivals and genre festivals as they pop up?
You can follow me at Donatobomb, DONATOBOMB, and that is Blue Sky, and that is Instagram, and that is Letterboxd, and that is where everything Mr. Monagle talked about will be. I have an authory that you can always click on and subscribe to where it puts it all in one place, but that's
Nice.
more for me. I think, no one really follows that. It's more for me just to have a portfolio. But yeah, I'm it's weird. You're like, yeah, I'm getting into busy season. I'm like, oh no, just let me enjoy the rest of the summer.
No,
Busy season is September. Let me enjoy the rest of the summer.
no. You are also, I'm delighted to say, doing more on-camera interviews again. Good for you.
This was one in a, it's Evil Dead. I wasn't letting this one go by.
Yeah, but
So
you've got
I missed it. I missed it.
yeah,
You're right.
yeah, you're good. You can follow me on Blue Sky. It's monogle.bsky.social. I'm on Instagram as Matt Monagle. I'm on Letterboxd as something. Just search Matt Monagle under members or HQs and you'll find me. But most importantly, you can find us and everything that we do in our incredible, incredible rotation of freelance writers at certifiedforgotten.com. You can sign up for our weekly newsletter at certifiedforgotten.com/newsletter. And if you are a newsletter subscriber, you might even have seen that we're doing a little bit of merch, a little bit of merch. We got a hoodie, we got a couple of caps, we got a muscle shirt because my boy Matt Donato doesn't go anywhere where his shoulders are covered. So we've got some things for sale in our online store, and you should check that out. But otherwise, we are planning a very fun episode for next week. So like and subscribe, kids. You know how it goes. We'll see you soon.